What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and hey, look, it's been a minute for a couple reasons. So let me just kind of be out there with y'all. Look, the past few weeks, obviously there hasn't been a ton of news, but also my life's been super crazy as usual, and I was having some technical difficulties with some of my equipment and stuff, and some of my recording software, whatever. I don't know. I seem to have gotten it figured out. So with those things together, crazy life, not a whole lot of news, and then more recently technical difficulties is why I have not made a video. So I do want to apologize to you guys for not having put anything out. There has been some news accumulating over the past week or so since my last video, so I do have some things I do really want to talk about. So I guess I'll just go ahead and get right into it. And I'm definitely gonna, now that I seem to have gotten the technical difficulties worked out, I mean, my life's always crazy, so I just got to deal with that. But most importantly, since I got the technical difficulties worked out with some of my, with my stuff, it seems like now I should be able to once again make videos. So I will, definitely try and make sure I'm up on that and making, more regular videos, especially as we draw closer to, the training camp off-season program. So anyway, that's housekeeping stuff, so just kind of get that out of the way. And again, like I said, I wanted to apologize for not being up, because I know there have been at least a few important stories that do need to be talked about. So let's get right into it. The first thing that I want to talk about is, as I'm sure you guys already know, defensive tackle Kendrick Norton is no longer with the team, at least not in the sense that he's going to be practicing with the team and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, he was in a pretty major car accident in which he had to have his left arm amputated, which is pretty intense. I can't imagine, what that's got to be like. I mean, but for all intents and purposes, though, it seems like he's handling it well. Considering the fact that, like, he had come out with a statement, I think yesterday or whatever, saying, talking about it and saying that he wants to move on, start doing some charity work and stuff like that, which is amazing. And, but I will say that there's a lot to be said about having a good support system behind you, and the Dolphins are certainly taking care of, like, all of his medical expenses and stuff like that. And, he's got, other people, family and friends that obviously are going to, be there to back him up in this situation in life. So yeah, hopefully he's okay. Hopefully he can, move on and be all right. So that's the first thing. Second, I wanted to talk about, just real quick, the Miami Miracle was up for an ESPYs award as, like, the greatest play or whatever, blah blah blah. It didn't win. It was close, from what I could tell. There were four finalists, and we were up there, so that's cool. So that's fun. We didn't win though, but we came close, and so I guess that counts for something. Of course, it's funny though, because in the back of my head, the only thing I can think of is, man, just everybody hates shitting on the Dolphins, so it's not surprise. It's like, yeah, okay, great, because it's like, well, what choice do you have? I mean, that literally was like one of the best plays ever, so of course it's got to be talked about. But you can't give the Dolphins fucking any real credit or anything like that. Anyway, whatever. It's neither here nor there. Anyway, they did make it though into the top 4 or whatever finalists, so that's really cool. Next, kind of important and relevant, the supplemental draft just happened, like yesterday or whatever. We didn't take anybody, so there's that. I mean, there would be more to talk about if we had, taken some players and maybe, whatever, but we didn't, so yeah, there's that. But, you know, I did want to obviously mention it just because it did happen, and it is, you know, you have free agency, then you have the draft, and you have another round of free agency, and then comes the supplemental draft, in which, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory what it is. It's supplemental. It's to help supplement, you know, team if you have any, whatever. You guys get the point. We didn't take anybody, though, so there's really not much else to be said about it. And then finally, I just wanted to go ahead and read this little article real fast to you about the Miami Dolphins offensive line. There was a bunch of articles and stuff that I've read over the past few days that I did want to talk about, but since I haven't been able to actually like make a video, I didn't want to like pile it all in. You know, like I didn't want to pile it all in too much into one thing, so I'm just gonna keep it to this one. Anyway, it's on Bleacher Report, but from FinFanatic, finfanatic.com by Brian Miller. Pro Football Focus ranks the Miami Dolphins 2019 offensive line dead last. The Miami Dolphins' national expectations level continues to be near the bottom. Now Pro Football Focus has the Dolphins' offensive line ranked last. Add another category to the low expectations of the Miami Dolphins 2019 season, offensive line. According to a recent ranking of the NFL's offensive lines, Miami ranks 32nd. Pro Football Focus believes that the Miami Dolphins will have the worst offensive line in the league this year, and the question is, are they right? The reality is that they just might be. After all, the Dolphins don't exactly look like a team with answers on the line of scrimmage. And look, I mean, this is, you know, one article. I've seen, you know, a lot of people talking about it. And, you know, Pro Football Focus isn't the end-all be-all. But there is something to be said about it. It is context. It is a data point and some information. And look, man, I'm telling you, I've been saying it since the beginning. First of all, I mean, you guys know I don't really agree with a lot of what they did, probably a majority of the things that they did in the offseason, particularly with the draft and the massive purge that they did. But, you know, considering the fact that they just let so many guys walk, like Juwan James, you know, Josh Sitton, you know, I think he ended up retiring. So maybe he would have done that anyway, but maybe not if he would have stayed around, right? Anyway, whatever. And then they just didn't, frankly, they just didn't do anything near close enough to address it. Because after the entire purge and letting guys walk and so on and so forth, the only guy that they have on the line that they know is reliable, that they can build for the future and so on and so forth is Tunsil. The other guy you have on the line that, you know, you can probably trust and rely on is Daniel Kilgore, but he's old. He got hurt last year, you know, and missed the entire season essentially. So, I mean, you're banking on unknowns, you're banking on failures, you're banking on middling guys, backups, like you just didn't do shit. You're banking on a third round pick that has, to this point, not been a disappointment, but it, considering your needs on the offensive line, like I wouldn't say he's a disappointment because he's a third round pick. You expect even a third round pick to be developmental and to take some time, but we need help immediately. We don't have time for that. And so that's why when your only real answer is, you know, a guy of that quality and caliber that you expect to take time to develop into that role, that's not sufficient in any kind of way. When you bring in guys like Chris Reed, who have been nothing more at best as, you know, backups and spot players, it's not adequate enough. Anyway, the Dolphins are expected to line up from left to right: Laramie Tunsil, rookie Michael Dieter, Daniel Kilgore, Jesse Davis or Chris Reed, and Jordan Mills or Jesse Davis or Zach Stirrup at the right tackle position. And see, that's another thing. Sure, do we have to know exactly who's going to line up on the line right now? No, not necessarily. But the thing is, the offensive line, and this is one thing that doesn't get, you know, talked about enough, and did actually get talked about, you know, and focused on in the last regime, is that the offensive line needs cohesiveness. They need continuity. They need to be able to practice together and build that chemistry and so on and so forth. Learn how they play with each other and how to feed off each other and so on and so forth. There is no more important position group than the offensive line. Defensive line would come up next, but offensive line, there is no more important position group that has to work harmoniously and in sync for the team to be successful. And so it's a mess. It's a super mess that doesn't exactly make you believe they are going to field one of the top units in the league. Guard is a big problem for the Dolphins and has been since Richie Incognito was released after the Jonathan Martin scandal. Miami has not been able to solidify the left guard position, and the right side has been in flux as well, especially since you let Sitton go and since you let Juwan James walk. At least if you would have kept him, you would have had your bookends, and then you could have just worked with the middle of the line. And again, though, frankly, because if it was me, not only would I have made sure to keep Juwan James so that way I had solid, reliable, bookends for now and the future, but then I would have taken Garrett Bradbury in the first round, the top offensive lineman in the entire draft, a center. So you would have had your left tackle, your right tackle, and your center, which would have all been first round draft picks by you. Juwan James was a first round pick, Laramie Tunsil was a first round pick, and Garrett Bradbury was a first round pick, and you would have had a good base, a good skeleton, whatever, for that offensive line. Now we have like nothing, and the guys that they brought in at quarterback are going to suffer tremendously. Telling you. Center also is an unknown. Daniel Kilgore replaced Mike Pouncey last season, but lasted 2 games before heading to the injured reserve. Michael Dieter played well on the college level and ranked relatively high. Pro Football Focus says he graded out in the top 5 collegiately, but with that transfer to the NFL. Their Dolphins are banking on it, and they don't have many other options. Dolphins fans knew that the O-line was going to be a transitional unit this year, and it may not improve dramatically next year with potential quarterback and defensive end needs. Overall, the Pro Football Focus ranking means little, and seeing Miami at the bottom isn't all that surprising. It will be their job to prove everyone wrong, and it will be, absolutely. And again, it's not the end all be all, but it is a data point. But more importantly, though, I mean, it's just all this other stuff, all these other points. What did they do? They didn't do anything. And with the hyper focus on, quarterback and other things, which even now I would say is still not the biggest need, even though they severely downgraded in my opinion, the quarterback position. Because again, I would have had Ryan Tannehill without question over Fitzpatrick, and without question, I would have done the draft differently. Garrett Bradbury in the first, a defensive lineman in the second, and Will Grier in the third. I would have taken Will Grier over Josh Rosen any day. But, look, man, they made their bed. They're going to have to lie on it. And again, but anyway, so to finish that thought, though, with the hyper focus on quarterback, especially considering the fact that the offensive line is probably going to perform very poorly this year, the quarterbacks are going to look like shit. But then everybody is going to once again hyper focus on the quarterback, ignore the offensive line. That's what's going to probably most likely end up happening next year as well. And then it's just going to be this cycle of shit. And everybody's going to sit there and bitch and complain and moan and cry and point fingers. But, they didn't care to adequately address the root fundamental problems. And so just like our political system, just like the rest of the country and the world, people just constantly fucking ignore truth, ignore facts, ignore logic, ignore reason. They get up all in their feelings, and it's just a big mess. And then nothing ever gets solved because people don't ever actually talk about, let alone address, the root fundamental problems of what's at, or the root fundamental causes rather of what of the problems that we have. So look, we can't be shocked, we can't be surprised if, it turns out to be just nothing but a giant mess. And then furthermore, if we don't succeed this year, and then if we don't succeed next year, because they follow the same, business model, if you will, and ignore what is the highest priority for this team. I'm telling you, man, if we shit the bed this year and we go like 3-13 and we end up in the top end of the draft, but then they take like a Tua Tagovailoa, well, then you've proven that Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen were both mistakes and a waste of time and money, because you're going to essentially either jettison them or get rid of them at some point, because you invested so high in a young quarterback that you're gonna expect to be the future, and so on and so forth. And not only are they essentially then proven to be a waste, but then you just completely, once again, ignored the most important unit. Now, obviously, that's a year, still a little less than a year from now, so we actually have to wait and see how things go. Obviously, I can't, predict, and say for sure what they're going to do, but just so far, based off of what I'd seen, I think it's probably a whole lot more likely that after we shit the bed this year, they take a quarterback, and maybe it's Justin Herbert, maybe it's not Tua, but it's a waste. It's going to end up being a waste, because then he's going to get put into the fire immediately, day one, guaranteed. Mark my words, dude, I'm telling you. If we shit the bed this year, and then they take a quarterback high next year, it's going to be complete disaster, and he's going to be, whether it's Tua or Justin Herbert, at least his first year is going to get, wasted, probably even his second and third, because they didn't address and will refuse to address the offensive line adequately. So we'll see. We shall see. We got some time before all that is definitive. But look, I mean, it doesn't look really all that great for us and for the future, from my perspective, based off of the information and the data that I have. So anyway, guys, with that, I am going to go ahead and conclude this video. I hope you guys do enjoy them. Like I said, I apologize again for my absence, for my absence and everything that and is involved in that. So I apologize for my technical difficulties. I do my best. I try and keep it. My computer's old. Blah blah blah. I mentioned this to you before, but I do my best. So I apologize for that. I apologize for always having such a crazy life, and so on and so forth. And I mean, look, I'm not trying to use them as excuses. Look, this is something that I've dedicated to, and I need to be better and be the best that I can. So again, like I said, I apologize to you guys for not being better, and I'm doing my best for you. So please, I hope that you guys stick with me and hang in there. And I hope you do, guys, like my videos. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And, of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter, @Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.